While many women enjoy capturing their makeup looks in selfies, some men take their selfie game to dangerously extreme levels. From a driver whose quick stop to answer nature's call that ended in tragedy, to an electrician whose curiosity led him too close to a wild elephant, here are tales of selfies gone fatally wrong. On the morning of February 15, 2024, the Sri Venkateswara Zoological Park in Tirupati opened its gates like any other day, welcoming families, students, and nature enthusiasts eager to witness the majesty of India's diverse wildlife. Nestled in the hills of Andhra Pradesh, the sprawling 5,500-acre zoo is the largest in Asia, home to a wide array of species, from graceful antelopes to imposing big cats. Visitors wandered along its paths, marveling at the enclosures carefully designed to mimic natural habitats. Few could have imagined the grim spectacle that would unfold before midday, a spectacle that would leave staff and visitors stunned and spark a national conversation about reckless behavior and the unseen edges of digital culture. Among the stream of visitors that day was a man traveling alone, 38-year-old Prahlad Gujar from Alwar district in Rajasthan. He moved through the entrance gates quietly after purchasing a single ticket, clutching a plastic water bottle and an aging smartphone in one hand. It was a hot day, the kind that makes the air shimmer just above the ground. According to early eyewitness accounts, Prahlad appeared slightly unsteady on his feet and smelled faintly of alcohol, though none of the staff paid him more than passing attention. But what Prahlad would do next stunned everyone. Around 11:30 a.m., he reached the lion enclosure, one of the zoo's star attractions. 3 lions resided there, 2 males and 1 female, all part of a breeding program sourced from the Gir Forest National Park in Gujarat. The dominant male, named Dungapur, was a 12-year-old lion with a golden mane and the commanding presence of an animal born to rule. Zoo staff knew his temperament well. He was territorial, powerful, and not fond of sudden disturbances. What happened next was witnessed by a few horrified onlookers and confirmed later through CCTV footage. Prahlad ignored the restricted area signs and with alarming agility scaled the 4-foot safety wall. A zoo watcher, stationed near the enclosure, shouted frantically for him to stop. The warning fell on deaf ears. Prahlad had already climbed atop the water tank, peering into the habitat below where the lions lay in the shade, half asleep in the afternoon heat. Then, with a suddenness that defied reason, he jumped. The drop wasn't lethal, but it was enough to startle the lions. All 3 lions stood up in confusion, their tails flicking. Then came a moment of deadly silence before nature's instinct took over. Dungapur, the alpha male, lunged forward with a roar that echoed through the enclosure. The female lion stayed back, her eyes tracking the intruder, while the second male circled cautiously. Gujar tried to retreat. Panic surged through him. He turned and made for the nearest tree inside the enclosure, scrambling up halfway, clinging to the bark with bare hands and trembling limbs. But Dungapur was faster. In a devastating leap, the lion caught Prahlad by the leg and dragged him down. Claws slashed through skin, jaws clamped around his neck. Zoo staff and visitors screamed. A few caught the scene on video, phones shaking in horror. Inside the enclosure, chaos reigned for mere seconds, but to those watching, it stretched into a surreal eternity. The lion dragged Gujar for nearly 100 meters, deeper into the enclosure, ignoring the zookeeper's desperate shouts. Staff rushed behind the fences, activating emergency protocols. Meat was thrown near the cage to lure Dungapur away, but after several tense minutes, the lion was coaxed into the holding area. But it was too late. When Gujar's body was retrieved, it was clear that he had succumbed to his injuries. Deep wounds marked his neck and chest. Blood loss had likely killed him within minutes. An ambulance was called, but there was little for paramedics to do. The area was cordoned off, and the zoo was temporarily closed to visitors. Reporters began to gather outside the entrance gates, sensing a tragic and bizarre story. Officials from the Forest Department arrived, initiating an investigation into how such a breach could have occurred. It was not the first such tragedy. In an age where social validation is tied closely to digital recognition, risky behavior in pursuit of viral content has become disturbingly common. Just 3 months earlier, a zoo worker in Visakhapatnam was killed by a bear after forgetting to shut a safety door. That too had raised questions about safety and training. But Gujar's case was different. This wasn't an accident. This was a willful defiance of every warning sign, both literal and metaphorical. Forensics were quick to act. The body was sent for a postmortem, and early reports suggested Prahlad had indeed been intoxicated. Toxicology samples were sent for further analysis, but the investigators believed alcohol impairment played a significant role in his behavior. There was no suicide note, no known history of mental illness. His family, when informed, expressed shock and confusion. Prahlad had left his hometown in Alwar several days earlier, saying only that he wanted to see the South. He had no known friends or contacts in Tirupati. In the weeks that followed, the public response was sharply divided. Some viewed Prahlad as a victim of his own recklessness, yes, but also of a society that increasingly glorifies dangerous stunts for the sake of online attention. Others were furious, questioning how a man could breach security so easily in a high-risk area. Zoo authorities defended their protocols, citing multiple warning signs, barriers, and the watcher's intervention. But under pressure, they agreed to review safety measures, including adding taller fences and more staff around predator enclosures. But no matter how much the safety measures are reviewed, that can't bring back Prahlad, same as the driver in this next story. It was early evening on May 2, 2018, and the red dust of Odisha's Nabarangpur district clung to the tires of an SUV as it sped down a rural road. The vehicle, slightly worn and heavy with passengers, made its way back from Kotapad, where a local wedding had just wrapped up. Laughter from the celebration still lingered in the air, drifting out of cracked windows. Behind the wheel was Prabhu Bhattara, a 27-year-old driver from the small town of Papadahandi. A quiet man by most accounts, Bhattara was respected for his work ethic and well-liked in his community. As the vehicle approached a forested patch near Kujaguda village, Bhattara brought it to a halt. He needed a brief break, to step out, stretch, and attend to nature's call. The passengers waited, chatting idly, unaware that what followed would be seared into their memories forever. Near a pond at the edge of the trees, Bhattara noticed something that instantly drew his curiosity. A sloth bear, injured and lumbering, clearly in distress. For many, the sight of a wild bear would have triggered immediate caution, but for Bhattara, perhaps fueled by the heady mixture of a festive evening, curiosity, and the ubiquity of smartphones, it sparked a different impulse. He pulled out his phone. His passengers called out, warning him not to go near. They urged him to get back in the car, but Bhattara stepped closer, slowly, his eyes fixed on the wounded animal. Sloth bears, though not as infamous as their grisly relatives, are unpredictable and capable of terrifying aggression, especially when injured or provoked. But in that moment, the creature seemed passive, broken even, resting by the water with labored breath. Bhattara moved in, lifted his phone, and turned his back to the bear for a selfie. What followed was swift and savage. With a sudden roar, the bear lunged. Its claws, powerful enough to strip bark from trees, struck Bhattara down. The phone fell to the ground, its screen splintering on impact. The forest erupted in shouts. Passengers screamed from the roadside. A man grabbed a stick and rushed toward the chaos, and a stray dog that had been loitering nearby launched itself at the bear in a desperate bid to intervene. But it was no use. The dog snapped and snarled. The man swung his stick with trembling hands, but the bear was locked in a deadly rage. Amateur footage later broadcast across India would show the harrowing scene in chilling clarity. Bhattara struggling beneath the bear's weight, blood soaking the dust, managing to stand briefly before being dragged down once more into the underbrush. Fist against claw, human will against primal fury. The fight was futile. Within minutes, it was over. The bear, breathing heavily, did not flee. It stood its ground beside the lifeless body, growling low as if guarding its kill, or perhaps simply too wounded to run. No one dared approach. Calls were made to the forest office, but help was far. The nearest outpost was over 10 kilometers away. For hours, the bear lingered by the road, the body untouched. By evening, forest officials arrived. They brought with them a tranquilizer gun and a stretcher. The bear, still aggressive, had to be subdued with care. Only after it collapsed into unconsciousness could they retrieve Bhattara's body. The bear, they noted, had suffered injuries, likely from a fight with another animal, so it was transported for treatment. News of the attack spread rapidly. The grainy video clips circulated on television and social media, drawing outrage, horror, and debate. Some viewers focused on the brutality of the scene, others on the recklessness that led to it. Many saw it as yet another grim chapter in the growing tension between humans and wildlife in India, where forests shrink and animals increasingly wander into human settlements. At Batara's home, grief turned quickly to anger. His family, shattered by the loss, received 30,000 rupees from the government for his last rites. Officials promised further compensation as per guidelines, but the community demanded more. Locals blocked roads in protest, insisting that the tragedy deserved greater recognition and financial redress. Yet beneath the political noise and the media frenzy lay a quieter truth, one that gripped those who had known Prabhu Batara not as a headline, but as a friend, a son, a driver who never complained. His death was not just a freak accident, it was the result of a culture increasingly obsessed with documentation over discretion, with capturing moments instead of respecting them. In an age where every experience is viewed through a camera lens, where danger is romanticized for the sake of online clout, the line between daring and foolishness has grown perilously thin. Despite repeated warnings from forest officials about the dangers of approaching wild animals, this next man couldn't resist getting a selfie with the largest land animal on Earth. What did he get in return? The answer is as tragic as it is avoidable. In the quiet, sun-dappled expanse of Maharashtra's Gatrioli forest, where thick teak trees give way to winding trails and the distant rumble of nature's might never truly fades, a young man named Sashikant Ramchandra Seder met a tragic end. It was October 24, 2024, just another humid afternoon in central India. But for Seder, a 23-year-old electrician from Navagaon in the neighboring Chandrapur district, it would become the final chapter in a life cut heartbreakingly short. Seder wasn't a thrill-seeker by trade. He was a hard-working man, employed in a routine cable-laying project alongside two colleagues, dispatched to the remote Kanghata forest range near Abapur village. The work was ordinary, dusty, and unremarkable, until word of an extraordinary presence reached their ears. Rumors had been swirling for days in the local villages about a wild elephant known among forest officials as CME3, a solitary tusker with a violent history. Migrated from the dense jungles of Chhattisgarh, this elephant had left a trail of fear in its wake. It was no secret. Signs had been posted, warnings issued, and rapid rescue teams dispatched. The message was clear. CME3 was not to be approached under any circumstance. But temptation is a powerful thing, especially in the digital age. For Seder and his colleagues, the presence of such a creature so close, just 600 meters from their worksite, was too enticing to ignore. Despite the warnings, despite the elephant's reputation, they ventured off the beaten path as they sought a glimpse of the beast. And there it was. Majestic and terrifying, CME3 stood in a clearing, its dark hide flecked with dust, its tusks gleaming like ivory blades beneath the canopy light. From a distance, Seder raised his phone. Perhaps he thought the elephant looked calm. Perhaps he believed the space between them was enough. He angled the camera for a selfie, his face lit with the wonder and recklessness that often accompany such moments. But CME3 was no docile attraction. The elephant turned, its ears flared, and in a split second, primal instinct overtook curiosity. What happened next was a blur of panic and terror. The forest exploded with sound, the crashing of undergrowth, the sudden thud of enormous feet pounding the earth. Seder's companions ran, hearts hammering, breath catching in their throats as they fled for safety. But Seder, frozen by misjudgment or sheer fear, stumbled. The tusker caught him before he could escape. Witnesses would later describe the scene in hushed, broken tones. Seder was trampled, mercilessly, fatally, by the very creature he had tried to capture in a photograph. By the time forest officials arrived, alerted by desperate calls, it was too late. The death sent shockwaves to the region, not just because of its gruesome nature, but because it was preventable. Maharashtra's principal chief conservator of forests, Vivek Kandekar, addressed the public with somber urgency. He detailed the extensive efforts taken to warn residents, village meetings, posted alerts, patrols by rapid rescue teams. Still, the elephant had slipped through perimeters, and still, people ignored the danger. CME3 wasn't an anomaly. Wild elephants, particularly lone tuskers, are often unpredictable and aggressive, especially when provoked or startled. Yet increasingly, such creatures are becoming unwilling participants in a bizarre modern ritual, one where humans armed with smartphones blur the line between admiration and intrusion. Satyr's death is not the first of its kind. Across India and indeed the world, there's that troubling trend of pursuing dangerous selfies, often in close proximity to wild animals, and it isn't in any hope of stopping soon. But where social media thrives on spectacle, the natural world plays by different rules, ones that do not bend for the camera.